Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Grossman Files. Hey, we got a great one for you today, folks. Yes. Welcome all y'all out there in Son of Sam land to another installment in the Placido Lupo series that we've been doing. And I'm actually really glad that the response has been so great. Lots of great views, good interaction, good comments. So I decided that you guys are officially interested, and so we're carrying on. So of course, well, what are we doing today? Well, before we get into what we're doing today, let's just briefly talk about what we've done so far. Of course, our first show, as I say hello to Derek Larson of the world, the Queen Ruby, the Ray J of the world out there. Of course, our first show, we dealt with Maury Terry's lies. It's always good to get Maury Terry's whoosao out of the way, because not only do we learn how that guy just lied, manipulated, abused, totally invented, like Grimm's fairy tales, totally invented this story up. But we also learn from that as well. You can always learn from Maury Terry's whoosao. When you learn what wasn't true, well, it sort of starts to solidify what was true and what actually happened. And then, of course, our second show, we dealt with it's funny, what did we deal with? Oh yeah, victim statements and forensics. And so today, of course, we're going to be dealing with the eyewitnesses. Now, before you get too excited, there were some eyewitnesses to the actual event, and we're going to deal with those. But when I say eyewitnesses, what I'm really talking about are people who were there that night, people at Elephas, people on the street, people who were driving in their cars, even in other parts of Queens, and had stories to tell, people in different bars. Ralph Sacante, for instance, the owner of the Cadillac, and so on and so forth. In addition to, of course, the one eyewitness, which we're going to deal with today, to the actual shooting, who saw Berkowitz, described him, said where he fled to, and all that. And so, and of course, we're going to deal with canvases today as well, some fruitful canvases. So today's actually an action-packed show. And we have one more show after this. Just posted it today. We're going to be doing it on Monday, this coming Monday. We're going to be doing a show entitled Glenn. I'm just going to let you guys stew on that one. Glenn was a weird eyewitness to the events. Did he see what happened? Did he not see what happened? We're going to hear from him, his friends, and so on and so forth. And that's a really going to be a really interesting show. And on that show, though, I'm not going to tell you Glenn's last name. There's going to be some redactions today, in fact, and I'm only redacting because I want to be the people that finds these people and speaks to them first. I'm sorry, I'm petty like that. I want the scoop. I'm not going to let anyone know who these people are because I want to find them first. You got their names, you got their stories, and hopefully that's good enough. And so that's why we'll be seeing some redactions in today's show and in next week's show, and so on and so forth. So we got a lot going on today, people of the world. But before we get started, I just want to give you a little update, as I see some new people coming on into the chat. Well, I was up in Yonkers, and I was on a mission. I was on a mission to. I wanted to go into Maury Terry's old property and see if I could dig anything up. Well, I think I hit a gold mine, folks, because I was out in the backyard rummaging, where I saw a box entitled Maury's Most Important Things. This was just this morning I did this. I couldn't believe what I found. I open up this box and I find a book. No, it isn't a book on satanistic practices. No, it was not a book on druidism or a book on Elephas Levy with Berkayal and Karasama. No. This was entitled Maury's Most Prized Possession, Maury's most important book that he had towards his research into the Son of Sam cult. Fundamentals of urine and body fluid. And what's crazy is I found some dog-eared pages. I found this page. And it was just like his notes that we got confirmed with Rothstein. I mean, he was still obsessed with this topic. Here, I found another dog-eared page. To the end of his days, he was obsessed with the topic. Make sure Larry Siegel agrees. So I just wanted to let you guys know my amazing discovery. As we get on into the meat of the matter, the eyewitnesses and their reports from the Placido Lupo shooting. So we got some Google Earth stuff to check out, but we're going to do that a little later because I got this under control. This is going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to this. By the way, just so we all understand, this book was not found in Maury's thing. Okay. I hope you could tell I was joking. I found this in the laundry room today and I was like, oh shit, it's a sign. So anyway, all right. So let's find out what happened that night from the eyewitnesses themselves. All right. Well, there was actually an odd incident earlier that evening of June 26, 1977, and let's hear about it. So this is actually for some reason it's labeled a forensic report. I'm not quite sure why. So this is 626. My apologies. It's a little blurry. I don't know why. Judy Placido, Sal Lupo, just so we see, 2208 Wickham Avenue, Bronx, and so on and so forth. So responded to front of 45th Precinct house to process for evidence of latent fingerprints, passenger side, and photograph the below described vehicle in connection with the above crime. So the cops thought that this vehicle that they were checking out could be connected to the shooting of Judy and Sal. Between 0240 hours and 0250 hours, so this is 40 minutes, about 30 minutes before the shooting, 62677, James A. Vandervoort of 513 Hollywood Avenue, Bronx, the operator of the below described vehicle, was with two others, Eddie Lopez, I'm not going to just say their address, whatever, and Pat O'Sullivan. Okay, this is a little annoying. Let me just pull it back here. On Francis Lewis Boulevard at intersection with Utopia Parkway. We'll see this in Google Earth after we're done with this. And waiting for traffic light to make a right turn when an unidentified male, white, about 30 years old, with a black vest, white shirt sleeves rolled up, and black pants, who was standing in the street looking all around strangely, approached the vehicle from the passenger side and kept repeating several times, "Pardon me, excuse me," as he looked into the rear of the vehicle. The operator moved up a few feet, and the unidentified male with a plastic bag under his right arm followed and continued uttering, "Pardon me, excuse me." The operator became alarmed and fled through the light. Photos, 1972 Oldsmobile. So once again, this is another thing where, like, anybody who says the cops weren't doing their jobs and they covered it up, they were fingerprinting cars that strange men touched 30 minutes before the shooting in an area actually quite far away. Let's let's take a look at where this was. So this says Francis Lewis Boulevard at intersection with Utopia Parkway. So let's look and see where that is on Google Earth. All right. So here we go. Just so we're all clear, we are looking at the borough of Northern Queens right here, with our area of interest all down in this business over here. And we can see that Elephas and all of the action of that evening, the real action, took place all the way down here. This Vandevort story took place over here, Vandevort, Francis Lewis Boulevard, and Utopia Parkway. So it happened like pretty far away. I mean, not terribly far, but it happened far, quite far from Elephas. All right. So this took place on this, somewhere in this intersection. Pardon me. Excuse me. Pardon me. Excuse me. Pardon me. So that took place right over here. Francis Lewis Boulevard and Utopia Parkway. Exactly, Rubes. They were working their ass off. They were fingerprinting all sorts of cars. I mean, the things that we did not know, the things that Maury left out of the story, that's why I call him a true crime criminal, because he steered our minds into actually thinking that the cops were bad. They were out there fingerprinting random cars that random dudes touched. Hey, yo, Ray J, I was thinking kind of the same thing about that this actually might have been Berkowitz, because white shirt sleeve. I mean, he's wearing a vest, but that doesn't sound like Berkey. But what I'm saying is that I was thinking the same thing. This whole thing about going up to a car and saying something to the people, it's very reminiscent of even though it wasn't a car, of Lomino Damasi, with the whole I even think he said, excuse me, can you tell me, pardon me, can you tell me how to get to somewhere? And then he pulled the gun out. Yo, Ray J, that's a good observation. I'm proud of you for making that one. Sorry, my voice is a little shot today. Hold on. So this is, you can file this one away as curious, for sure, in my opinion. So the first officer is on the scene. Okay, so this is the DD5, 62677, patrol by the undersigned in the vicinity of place of occurrence. On 6/25/77 at 20:00 hours, the undersigned with PO Gino Casaza, DAOKC, was assigned sectors 5 and 6 in auto 398, radio Flushing 43. The location of Elephas Disco, located at the intersection of Northern Boulevard and 211th Street, was observed on numerous occasions. Numerous groups of males and females were observed in front of the premises and into 211th Street towards 45th Road. The approximate time of the last observation was 3:00 hours. No suspicious persons were observed thereat. The streets, 45th Road, 45th Drive, and 46th Avenue between Bell Boulevard and Clearview Expressway, were patrolled between the hours of 0030 and 0200. No suspicious persons were observed at these locations at times. Now, what's interesting about this, the last observation was like 15, 20 minutes before the shooting. Let's just say 15 minutes before the shooting. That kind of jibes with Berkowitz saying that he kind of just walked up on this scene. He was walking around, but he kind of walked up on the scene and saw them. That's what he says in his confession. And of course, this also shows his increasing recklessness. If you think about this, very reckless, because there were a lot of people in the street. There were a lot of activity, bustling. There were numerous groups of male and female were observed in front of the Elephas. It says here there were a lot of people out, and there were patrol cars specifically looking at Elephas that night. And yet Berkowitz went in, did his thing, and was able to escape. It just goes to show the brazenness and also the increasing mania. And of course, this was the one right before where he got the parking ticket. The next shooting, he would get the parking ticket. So here's some fruitful canvases. And when I say fruitful canvases, what I mean by that is there's actually like 15 pages that there's no point in even showing you, because it's just like when we saw the Savino, like no answer, no answer, no answer, no answer, just repeated name after name, people, house after house, where they just had nothing at all. They got no responses, no answer at the door. People didn't hear anything. People didn't see anything. So what I've done is I've distilled all the canvases down into what I'm calling the fruitful ones, the ones that are useful for our discussion. And if anybody's a real nerd and they want to have a private session with me where you see the rest of the unfruitful canvases, well, we can set that up. All right. So there's 4 pages of fruitful canvases, and these are pretty cool. 2 of these we've actually already seen because they were part of the Maury Lying show, and they deal with the gold Chevelle and the guy driving away with the gold Chevelle. So we'll read those again just to get those in context of everything else that was happening that night. So assault, gunshot, Lupo Placido, David and Karen Stevenson, 209 68 45th Drive, Queens, New York. On June 26th, the undersigned interviewed the subject at their residence. The subject stated that at about 2200 hours, June 25th, 1977, they observed a male white 30, 6 foot, 170, mustache, clean appearance, dark suit jacket, tie, light colored check pants, very dark complexion, park a tan or gold 1964-65 Chevy Impala, good condition, opposite their residence, leave the audio and walk west on 45th Drive in the middle of the street. At about 3:30 hours, they observed the same person enter the auto and drive away with his lights off. So there's no indication of who this person was, if they even went. They actually walked away from the Elephas. If they walked west on 45th Drive in the middle of the street, that's not walking to Elephas. So who knows who this person was? They got in their car and they drove away. Of course, Maury turned this guy into Mike Carr, into the sandy-haired guy who was driving away, speeding away. So here is actually the same canvas. So these must have been done at different times. Canvas of 45th Avenue between 211th and Oceana. Tenant Karen Stevenson states that she heard firecrackers at about 3:30, looked out the window and saw a white male, tall, wearing a shirt and tie, entered a gold or mustard colored vehicle, a Chevelle size, can add nothing further, drove off casually. So yes, Nicosmas. Northern is busy, big boulevard, but gets quiet one block off left to right. Yeah, absolutely. So let us get back to our slideshow. Give me a second here. All right, and here's our second set of canvases. My apologies for this. And this is kind of interesting, and we're going to see where these people were. Okay, we're going to, because these are new canvases, and we'll look in Google Earth at where these ones were. So canvas of area, vicinity 4539 211th Street. So 4539 211. This is the house we're right in front of was the shooting. Judy and Sal were right here. Mr. Ed Dombrowski stated that he heard 4 or 5 shots, which sounded like firecrackers. Miss Dorothy Dombrowski stated that she heard 4 shots, looked out the window, and saw a female saying, "Please help me." Henry Kanuski sleeping, Ted Dombrowski sleeping and heard nothing, Stanley Dombrowski negative results. So the Dombrowski family dominated this area around here. There was a lot of Dombrowskis around. Okay, and that gives a little bit of a color to this story, right? It's like we're Bob Ross. We're painting this scene, piece by piece, and something like the Dombrowskis of 211 Street. Now we know that this happened in front of their house. Canvas in the area vicinity of 211th Street and 45th Avenue. So we'll look at these as soon as we're done. We'll look at these on Google Earth. So we're going to call this the first story. 4563 211th Street. Mr. Jackson and Mrs. Davis. Mr. Davis. Both state that at about 3:30 to 4 o'clock, they were sitting in the front room of the above address. At about that time, they heard 3 or 4 detonations, which they believed to have been firecrackers. About 5 minutes later, they both went out to the street and observed a large crowd on the next block. That was the scene. No further information. 4525 Oceania Street. Story number 2, Mr. James Walters states that at about 3:30 hours, he was sitting on the rear porch of his home when he heard 4 or 5 shots come from the direction of 211th Street. Thinks that he heard tires screeching, but does not recall if it was before or after hearing shots. Now, this is interesting because this is closer to where Berkowitz said that he was parked near and where he ran to. This was the direction he ran to. All right, so we're going to now look at Jackson, who were sitting in their front room, heard 3 or 4 detonations, and then walked out and saw on the next block over a large crowd. And then we're going to look at Walter's home, who says that at about 3:30 in the morning, he was on the rear porch when he heard shots coming from the direction of 211th Street. So now, let's take a look at this. Okay. Give me a second here. Let's get it. All right. So now we're zooming in on the area where this all took place. Let's look at the first story. This is Jackson and Davis. This was the ones who were sitting in the front room of their house, heard some shots, then walked outside and then looked and saw on the next block, a scene. That's where they saw it. So that actually makes sense given this geography. This was their house right here. Okay, right here. This house over in this area, this one right here. The scene was right over here. So they would have walked out their front porch, looked up the block towards, so their house was right here. They would have walked outside and seen a crowd gathering in the distance up here. The shooting took place right about where this car was, right in front of where this construction is. That's where the shooting took place. All right. So that was story number 1. Now, story number 2 was James Walters. He was the dude who was sitting in his back porch, sitting area, and heard shots coming from the direction of 211th Street. He then heard tires screeching, but he didn't know whether it was before or after the shooting. So that's actually evidentiary useless to us. But I want to show you a few things about this. First, note that the shooting took place over here. He was all the way at the end of the block over here. So he wasn't a huge distance away, but he wasn't right up on the event like we heard from the people who lived literally in this house right here, right in front of the shooting. They heard Judy say, "Please help me." This guy, James Walters, he just heard some shots coming from the distance. And then he heard what he thought were tires screeching, possibly before, possibly after. He has no freaking clue. So he was over here, all the way over here. And if the only way to get to 211th Street, he was in Oceania and 45th, was to go down this street here, all the way down here. So he was actually quite a distance. And let's take a look at the sitting area that he said that he was hanging out at, just so we orient ourselves. Sal and Judy were shot over here now because I've turned the direction of this whole thing. So he was literally sitting in one of these two backyards. I believe it was this one on the right, but it could have been this one here. So a little Queens backyard. He was out there chilling. Why he was out at 3 in the morning, I have no idea, but that's what he was doing. He was chilling on his back porch at 3 a.m. and heard the shots, and then thought what he heard was a person screeching away, but he really has no freaking clue. So those were the most fruitful of canvases as we return back to Walters and Jackson and Davis. Jackson and Davis, weren't those freaking Civil War era people? All right. So now we get into the more of the meat of the matter, the action at Elephas itself. What actually occurred from this particular set of eyewitnesses that we're talking about in this show, and next week's show will be specifically about Glenn. I'm going to let you stew on Glenn. Ralph and Richie. All right. So, of course, who are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about Ralph Sacante, the owner of the Cadillac, who Judy and Sal were shot in. They were hanging out in the Cadillac right when Berkowitz entered their lair. And we're talking about a guy named Richie Comneck, who was friends with Ralph Sacante. And he had a little story to tell as well. So Ralph and Richie are Richie in particular is going to be important to this story. But let's hear from Ralph Sacante. 62677, interview Ralph Sacante. At 4:20 hours, the assigned interviewed Mr. Ralph Sacante. Mr. Sacante stated that he is employed at the Elephas disco as a bouncer and is the owner of the Cadillac in which the victims were shot. Registration 524XSY, New York. Mr. Sacante stated that he loaned the keys to the auto to Sal Lupo, his friend, and an unknown female. About 5 minutes later, Sal Lupo came running back into the Elephas and stated that he had been shot. Case active. So that's Sacante's statement. He was the owner of the Cadillac, and that's the only statement of Sacante in the entire case file. I'm actually surprised that he wasn't questioned more. You'd think that, they would run down every possibility, and maybe it was somebody who was looking to shoot him, and who were his friends, and who was he associated with. One would think that would have been done, but maybe it was tunnel vision because they just figured, all right, this is Son of Sam. It has nothing to do with this guy. So anyway, that's all Monday morning quarterbacking. So Ralph Sacante. So now let's hear from his friend Richie. Now, Richie is important, and I'm not going to tell you why. It'll become more evident as we read, because there's going to be 2 interviews with him. This first one, and then at the end of today's show, they re-interview him. So this is on 6/26, right on the day that it happened. Interview with Richard Comneck. On this date at about 4:20, so this was around the same time that they interviewed Sacante, the assigned interviewed Richard Comneck, Glendale, Queens. Mr. Comneck stated that at about 2:30 hours, he borrowed the keys to auto 524XSY from the owner of the vehicle, Ralph Sacante, a friend of his. Mr. Comneck stated that he proceeded to the auto with a female named Maria, about 20 years of age, and stayed in the auto with her, listening to music for about 15 minutes before returning to the Elephas. Mr. Comneck further stated that he observed two male whites in suits walking on the west side of 211th Street between 45th Drive and Road while he was seated in the vehicle. At about 2:45 hours, Mr. Comneck returned with the female to the Elephas, returning the keys to Mr. Sacante. So, of course, somewhat interesting. Right? I mean, this is kind of an interesting DD5 because this guy saw sorry, let me get it back to Ralph and Richie. This guy saw some people, and he'll get into more detail on his second re-interview, so we won't talk about that. But listen, he was hanging out in the freaking Cadillac before Sal and Judy were. These two, Comneck and whoever this Maria was, could have just as easily been the victims instead of Sal and Judy. Think about that. They were in the car right before. He says here that he at about 2:30 he borrowed the keys to the auto, and he proceeded to the auto and stayed with her listening to music for about 15 minutes before returning to Elephas. So he gave the keys back to Sacante at about 2:50, 2:45, 2:50, where Sacante says that he loaned the keys to the auto to Sal Lupo. So interesting little color thrown in there that the Cadillac didn't just have Sal and Judy in it. It also had Richie and Maria in it as well. So be that as it may, we will return to Richie later. Let's carry on. Well, now we're going to deal with Paul, Danny, and the crazy looking guy. What's up, Rodney Stubber? Funny, Rodney comments on people's videos, and then he gets accused of being me. So Paul, Danny, and the crazy looking guy. All right. So this is actually another one that we saw in Maury's Lie show, the one about the first show that we did on this. But we'll read it again to put it into context with everything that we're doing tonight. Interview of Paul Cintorino and Danny Mutarelli. The undersigned detective personally interviewed Paul Cintorino and Danny Mutarelli. The above persons state that they were in the Elephas disco at the time of the shooting and that the person described below was annoying their girlfriends. They further state that this person left the Elephas about 10 minutes before the shooting. Male, white, 28 to 30, 6 feet, 200 pounds, husky build, brown curly hair to collar, mustache, beige leisure suit, and crazy looking. So this was the guy who Paul Two Men Drove Away Mescal turned into the shooter. Right? Now, putting it all together, this was the dude who, the beige leisure suit, all of a sudden, to Paul Two Men Drove Away Mescal, he became the guy who sped away in the mustard colored car. And he became the guy who the Stevensons saw, these people here. Sorry. These people here, the Stevensons. Now he wasn't necessarily the same person here, because we see nothing about beige color, right? This guy actually was wearing a dark suit jacket, light colored check pants. So it doesn't sound like the same guy at all. Although 6 feet, male, white, 30, but this guy was only 170, whereas the crazy looking guy was 6 feet and 200 pounds. So anyway, be that as it may, you see now how morally vacant, lying newspaper reporters like Paul Two Men Drove Away Mescal do their thing And then it's compounded by the liar, the bullier, the manipulator, the abuser, the drunkard, the not good friend, the chain smoker, the guy who would send you 1,500 feet this way. You know the deal. It's compounded by that dude's lies as well, because then he took Meskill's article and then he took some of these police reports that probably his boy Basteri gave him. This Placido stuff is very interesting to put together, and it's actually teaching me a lot about Maury Terry, because now we see the name Basteri in these files. So that's interesting, right? Anyway, so Paul Cintorino and Danny Mutarelli. Now, what I found cool was, like, I decided to go to the newspaper archives and look up some of the names of these people, just to see, like, what's the deal with these people? Were they ever in the newspapers? Were there ever articles written about them? And I actually, interestingly enough, so we have here Richie Comneck, right? This is Sacante's friend who borrowed the Cadillac with Maria before Sal and Judy were in the Sacante's Cadillac. Richie Comneck, and then we have Paul Cintorino here. I actually found them in an article together from the Ridgewood Times in Queens, June 28th, 1973. Interesting. That was around the same time period, June, the same date. Ridgewood Post honors junior bowlers. And we have here Paul Cintorino and Richard Comneck. Now, they could be different guys. That's the thing about newspaper research. You never really know. But I don't know. I mean, it doesn't mean anything, but I just found it kind of cool and interesting. All right, so now let's deal with the eyewitness. The eyewitness. I was accused of being Ruby the other day. Yeah, Rodney, you can never win. That's why I don't bother anymore arguing or fighting. You just can never win. All right. All right, so let's deal with the eyewitness. So, of course, the eyewitness was somebody that we also saw in Maury Terry's Lie Show, but I left out one document. I kept one from you on the same person, but I kept one from you, so I would have something new to show you on this show. That's just the way we do things. And again, you're gonna see now I haven't redacted, but I did redact this guy. Why? Because I'm a journalist and I'm going to scoop every one of you. If this guy is to be found, he's going to speak to me. Sorry. That's just the way it goes. I used to have a partner, a research partner named Neo, and we sort of broke up our relationship over this very topic. I was cultivating Tommy Zano as a source. I was going to work with Zano, and then all of a sudden this guy Neo swoops in and takes Zano away and gives him to Carl Denaro. Meanwhile, Zano's like, yo, I don't even like Carl, and yo, this guy Neo, he keeps on bothering me all the time. The dude's creeping me out. So he kind of dropped all of us at that point, Tommy Zano, but like, that was the incident that caused me and Neo not to talk. And so I'm just like that. If you mess with my sources, you're going down. I'm sorry. That's just the way it goes. So no one's getting this guy's name. He's just going to be known as the bartender. All right. Interview of the bartender at Elephas Bar and Grill. On this date, I interviewed the bartender, who stated that he was on 211th Street between 45th Road and Northern Boulevard, west side of the street, at about 3:15 hours when he heard what he thought were firecrackers, 3 shots, and then saw the victim running towards him and a male white, about 5'9", stocky build, dark clothes, running south on 211th Street, crossing diagonally from east to west, who then made a turn by the yield sign, northwest corner of 211th and 45th Drive, and disappeared heading west on 45th Drive. He did not see any cars crossing or turning at the intersection of 45th Drive and 211th Street, Sal told him that he had been shot, and then the girl, Judith, staggered up to the corner of 45th Road and 211th Street. Both were very distraught and could not relate anything about what had happened. So there's a lot in here. All right. But we'll see. But now that I'm reading this, male, white, 5'9", stocky build, dark clothes. Let's go back to that first incident on Francis Lewis and Utopia. This dude here who was saying, "Pardon me, excuse me," was wearing a black vest, white shirt sleeves, and a black pants. So this dude was wearing dark clothes. The "pardon me, excuse me" guy could very well have been Berkowitz. And I'm only saying this now, guys. I'm not saying, like, I actually put this in as a joke to be like, see, they were seeing ghosts everywhere. But now that I'm actually hanging out with you guys and reading this and then seeing it in relation to what the eyewitness said, who said that he was wearing stocky build, dark clothes, that might have been Berkey. That might have been Berkey. So here's the second one. This is what I kept from you. Now I'm showing it to you now. This was actually the first interview of him, because this is 625 and this is 626. So I should have read you this one first, but hey. Interview of the bartender at Elephas. Subject interviewed at scene 0400 hours by this date by undersigned and Detective Moscardini. Subject states that he was standing on the east side of 211th Street, south of Northern Boulevard, when he heard shots south of 45th Road on 211th Street. He looked in that direction and observed a male, 5'8" or 5'9", stocky build, dark clothing, running diagonally southwest from the east side of 211th Street towards a yield traffic sign located at the northwest corner of 211th Street and 45th Drive. The male then ran west on 45th Drive. Subject then observed complainant Lupo running towards Elephas, reporting that he had been shot. He cannot add any further information relative to the male. Investigation continuing. All right, so I think it behooves us to look and see where this guy was. So remember, he was on the east side of 211th Street, south of 45th Road. So let's go see where that is. Sorry. Let me just orient this better. All right, so the bartender eyewitness. Sal and Judy were right here. Let me just get this so it's like facing south. All right. So north is at the bottom. Elephas Disco's right here. You go down the block. Sal and Judy were here. The bartender was right here. He saw Berkey run this way, down this road, this way. So the bartender was literally standing right here on this corner right here where this Jeep was. He saw 5'9", dark build, stocky, happen right about here, just maybe a little bit behind where this white car is. And then he saw Berkowitz cross the street here. There's now a stop sign, but it was a yield sign. Okay, we'll go down to it. He saw him cross the street from east to west, turn right on 45th Drive, which, just so we can confirm, we're looking at 45th Drive. 45th Drive. He turned right on 45th Drive, where he ran in the direction of the house of where he ran in the direction of the guy who said he heard a car screeching away, possibly before or after. He ran in the direction of that house. Berkey ran this way, and that dude was over here. All right, so these documents enable us to piece together what happened that evening. So Ray J, Ray J, you went there, man. You went there. I'm not. You know, I knew that this was gonna be someone was gonna think this, and you're not. You. It's just logical. I mean, you have to think that that's a possibility. So although it is uncomfortable, it is a possibility for sure. All right. So let's head our next topic. We only have a few more to go, but actually we got quite a few more to go. So now we have an interesting document here, which again we saw in our. I showed you this mistakenly in our Maury show because actually this didn't take place in the Elephas. I thought it did in that show. I didn't read the document closely enough. So the assembly bar. Now let's take a look and see quickly where this bar was in relation to the scene of the crime. Sorry for. I apologize for bringing us back to Google Earth. Let's find the assembly bar. Okay, Sal and Judy. All right, so I like to get this north and south. So now south is down here. Here's the Elephas. Northern Boulevard is now north. Where this took place, what we're about to read, took place here at this place called the Assembly Bar, which is on this corner right here. And it looks like it's some sort of house, right? Definitely looks like some sort of a restaurant type thing. In 77, it was called the Assembly. So let's read about the Assembly. So here's our DD5 on the Assembly Bar interview. And why'd they go there? Well, because there was a guy there who was of interest. Interview of Julio Vasquez. Oh, dude, wrong. Sorry, wrong, wrong document. 62677. Placido and Lupo. Interview of Robert Stossel, owner of the Assembly Bar, 4546 Pell Boulevard. On June 26th, 1977, Detectives Keenan and Detective Judge interviewed the above Tom O'Neill and Jack Geddas, both bartenders working till 4 a.m., state that there was a customer at the bar that was not a regular customer at about 2:30 hours to 2:45 or later. The customer looked like the 105 sketch, number 503, with well-groomed hair off the face and possibly a small mustache. The customer, male white, 5'11", medium build, wore a navy blue button shirt with a white Rolls-Royce insignia on the left side of chest and an unknown name on the right side of chest. He lingered over half a drink, gave a good look around, said nothing, and left. Both bartenders will view photos on Monday and attempt to ID customers. So this was nobody. This was a this was a nothing. Right. So, all right. So let's get back to the topic because obviously people are talking about. So John P. Yeah, they were going there and smoke a joint. Exactly. I mean, there could be a million things. I kind of figured people would pick up on this and bring it up as a possibility, and this is what I wanted to, out of respect to the victims. Like, I don't want to be the fomenter of salaciousness, but we're dealing with reality here, and we have these police reports. So I'm not editorializing myself. I just showed you the police reports, and whatever you guys want to do with them in your mind, you can do. But I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying you're right. What's up near Gutter's Path? What's going on? Yeah, the Elephas Levi barking with Berkayal and Kara Sama and the sandy haired guy. Can't believe we actually believed that crap back in the day. We all ate it up wholeheartedly. We loved Maury Terry back in the day. And one of the reasons we did was because he gave us, of course, the Who Sao of the Gold Caddy. Now, of course, we dealt with this in the Who Sao show of Maury Terry. But again, I like to put things in context. So these were eyewitnesses. These were people who the cops took seriously and spoke to. So we'll read about the gold Cadillac again. Interview of Julio Vasquez. The assigned in company with Detective Basteri, that's Maury Terry's friend, by the way, Detective Basteri of Homicide Task Force, visited Vasquez at his residence. Interview discloses that Vasquez and his girlfriend, Linda DiPietro, went to Elephas at 2300 hours, stayed about a half hour, and both went outside and walked around and talked for about 2 hours. Girlfriend Linda remarked to Vasquez that a 68 or 69 Cadillac had passed, slowed down, and looked in the direction of Vasquez and Linda. A short time later, he passed a second time, and then a third, then drove off on Northern Boulevard. Vasquez described auto as Cadillac, 6869, with dents on rear passenger side, dark color, black vinyl top. Incidents re-Cadillac took place at approximately 2:38 hours. Deep gold color, black vinyl top, dents on rear passenger side. Operator described as early 20s, early 30s, thin mustache, short black hair, pushed back, strong solid shoulders, wearing a short sleeve beige shirt, Italian or Greek. Both Vasquez and Linda went back inside Elephas at about 3 o'clock. At that time, talked to Sal Lupo for a short time. Sal and Miss Placido left Elephas at approximately 3:10 or 3:15. Neither Vasquez or Miss DiPietro knew of the shooting until patrons ran from the disco. And so that was the interview with Julio Vasquez. Now the interview with Pietro, his girlfriend. On June 26, 77, at about 1500 hours, Detective Joseph J. Basteri and Herbert Murray visited and interviewed Linda DiPietro, female, who was the girlfriend of Julio Vasquez. Miss DiPietro said that she had entered the Elephas Club with her boyfriend at about 11:30 p.m. on 6/25 and remained thereat for about half an hour. They both left and walked to the adjacent building on Northern Boulevard and sat on the stoop talking about football. At about 2:30 a.m., she stated she first observed an old Cadillac slowly drove by her. This car drove by slowly 3 times, and each time the male occupant kept staring at her. The third time around, the car made a U-turn and the car proceeded towards the direction of the Clearview Expressway. She obtained a good description of the male because she felt he was acting very strange. She described him as follows: male, white, 20s, early 30s, short black hair, not mod style, thin black mustache, stocky build, could be Italian or Greek, wearing beige short sleeve dress type shirt. At 3 a.m., she described the Cadillac as being either a 68 or 69. All right, we don't need to go through all this, all right, because she cannot recall anyone seeing suspicious while outside, anyone loitering. You can just screenshot this and read it on your own. Because it's basically all about nothing. This Cadillac had nothing to do with it. This was not Sam Solo. This was a dude who was a Greek or an Italian, short black hair. He had a mustache, wearing a beige short sleeve dress shirt. So, it was a guy looking for a parking spot and checking out maybe a hot girl that he wanted a couple of glances at. One of thousands, tens of thousands of weirdos in New York City who ogled women on the street in 1977. Again, Maury would have you believe that the only people who were at these crime scenes were cult members and victims, and that there was nothing actually happening. But we see there were things happening. People were going in and out of the Cadillac. There were people sitting around talking about football. There were gold Cadillacs driving around. People were in their houses, chilling out in their front rooms. People were in their back porches of their houses, and so on and so forth. Bartenders were outside hanging out on street corners, accidentally observing a shooting. There was life going on in the streets of New York City. And so, whereas Maury, probably what happened, I'm just going to guess here, but this guy Basteri, he was another one of Maury's stables, cast of characters, and I bet you that they sat around at Kennedy's bar, and Basteri was like, I know that Cadillac was involved, man. That Cadillac. So Basteri took these old documents. He told Maury about the gold Cadillac, and that's how the gold Cadillac ended up in The Ultimate Evil. I mean, you can piece these things together now. His name, it's not a coincidence that Basteri's name is on the DD5 that talks about the Cadillac that ends up in the book, that ends up in Near Gutter's Path's favorite book of the 1990s. My favorite book of the 90s, of the 2000s into 2010s even. My hatred of Maury, as you all know, came when I realized he lied to us on or about end of 2022. Actually, no. Let me check that. I knew it when we saw his stupid files in June of 2021. I just couldn't say anything because I was under this NDA. It's ridiculous, toothless, unlegally unenforceable, absolutely joke of a document that means nothing. Okay. So anyhow, so Basteri, you can see him and Maury getting together on this, but they missed one thing though. They missed the story of Beth and the blue van. Oh, Beth, Beth, I hear you calling, but I can't come home right now. Me and the boys are playing. And I don't even know the rest of that song. Who thought that was a good song? I don't understand why anybody thought that Beth was a good song. So let's read about Beth and the blue van. All right. So another thing, I don't know why Maury didn't include this. He should have, because this was another car he could have added to the mix. 6/26/77, interview of Kathy Siciliano. On 6/27/26/77 at 22:10 hours, the assigned interviewed Kathy Siciliano, female, 18 years, at the HTF office. Miss Siciliano stated that she arrived at the Elephas disco on 6/26 at about 11:15 with two friends, Beth Kramer and Maria. Here's Maria. Maria that was with Richie, probably, maybe, by private cab. Kathy further stated that about 2:15 to 2:30 hours, she was standing on southwest corner of Northern Boulevard and 211th Street outside of the Elephas with Beth Kramer and a male known to Kathy by the name Joey. At this time, a male, white, 26 to 29, driving a blue van which appeared to be painted, no windows on side or markings, which appeared to be in bad condition, stopped the van on the north side of Northern Boulevard facing west, causing traffic to blow their horns, and proceeded around his vehicle. Miss Siciliano stated that the male was staring at her and appeared weird. At this time, the music from within the Elephas attracted Miss Siciliano's attention, and she returned inside the premises with Beth Kramer and Joey. Miss Siciliano indicated the following names were present in the Elephas during the night of 6/26/77. Paulie the bouncer, Richie Comneck, Vinny from Bensonhurst. Miss Siciliano could offer nothing further which would aid the assigned in the investigation at this time. All right, so Miss Siciliano said that she came with Beth Kramer and Maria. So what do the cops do? They interview Beth Kramer. 6/26/77, interview of Beth Kramer. Now they're taking this seriously. They found this van, this blue van. They don't know about Berkowitz. They don't know about his white Galaxy. They don't know who he is. So they're taking all of these reports about odd and weird cars. They're taking them very seriously. You notice that these are the reports that are the most detailed, the most informed, the most serious ones are about these vehicles. That's why Maury took these and ran with it in his fictional narrative. I don't know why she didn't talk about the van. It was the snuff film van. This was Ron Sisman. Miss Kramer stated that she went to the Elephas disco with Kathy Siciliano and Maria, a friend of Kathy's, and was standing outside of the disco with Kathy at about 2:30 a.m. when her attention was directed by Kathy to a blue van stopped on Northern Boulevard. Miss Kramer stated that she observed a male white about 30 years of age driving, but could offer nothing further as to the male description of the description of the van. She stated that she went back into the disco with Kathy and remained there until approximately 4:30 hours. She further stated she heard about the shooting outside the disco from Kathy. Miss Kramer stated that she knows some of the persons present during the evening by first name only. Those present included Vinny from Avenue U, Bensonhurst, Arnie, about 18 years of age, Stu from Bensonhurst, Joey from Astoria, and Joe from Whitestone. She could give no further information which would aid in this investigation at this time. So the blue van and Beth. John P. Me and the boys are playing, and we just can't find the sound. Beth. Ralph and Richie Redux. Well, you thought Richie Comneck, the guy who borrowed the keys of Ralph Sacante's Cadillac and was with Maria in said Cadillac right before Sal and Judy were in said Cadillac. You didn't think the cops were done with Richie Comneck. I didn't think the cops were done with Richie Comneck, and Richie Comneck should not have thought that they were done with Richie Comneck, because they re-interviewed him. They re-interviewed this dude on 7/3/77, so a week later. Re-interview of Richie Comneck, male, white, 20. I don't care if people find him, because what's he going to tell you? He's telling you everything he knows here. He's not going to be able to tell you anymore. Subject is employed as a model maker. Hold on. All right. We don't have to know what he was employed at. You can read that on your own if you're interested. Subject was in Elephas on the night of occurrence at about 23:15 or 23:30 hours. He arrived there with Tommy Gaeta and Steve Langerello. Shortly after 2:30 hours, he met Maria Coppola, phonetic, borrowed Ralph Sacante's Cadillac keys, and left Elephas. He sat and talked with Maria in the car and returned to Elephas around 3 o'clock. He had a drink and danced after returning the car keys. He was back in Elephas around 15 minutes when he heard talk in the place that someone was shot outside. While in the car, he observed the males described below walking south from Northern Boulevard on the west side of 211th Street. Male, white, 30s, 5'10", 190, light brown leisure suit. Male, white, 30s, 6 foot, heavier than 1, dark brown, black leisure suit. They walked past the Cadillac to 45th Drive, turned around, and west north back to Northern Boulevard. He had not seen the males previously. In addition to aforementioned males, he observed the following person. Male, white, 30 to 33, 5'10", blonde or light brown hair, gray or light blue shirt with unknown design, dark blue pants. This individual walked south from Northern Boulevard on the west side of 211th Street. When he reached 45th Road, he crossed diagonally to the northeast corner of 211th and 45th Road, and then proceeded east on 45th Road. Subject states that he observed the male look at him and Maria as they sat in the car as he proceeded east on 45th Road. He had seen the male on 2 prior occasions, the same night in Elephas, standing at the bar, far and near. I'm sorry, it just was cut off. And on Thursday evening, June 23rd, talking to a girl in a gray dress in Elephas. The 2 males were observed prior to the lone individual. Subject believes he can recognize person described if he sees the investigation continuing. All right, so this cop drew a map. North is at the bottom, so Elephas is right here. This dude that we just saw, this lone individual, he walked this way. And this was like, at least half an hour before the shooting. But let's see if he was Berkowitz. Male, white, 30 to 33, 5'10", blonde or light brown hair, dark blue pants. Unlikely that this guy was Berkowitz. This right up here, this is the car that they were shot in. And it says here, position of witness, bartender, route of escape as reported by bartender. Okay. Again, you're not getting that name. Boom. This was the way that Berkowitz ran away. Ran across diagonally and west down 45th Drive. So again, we're just hearing about normal people from the club or from the neighborhood walking around the streets. They were at Elephas. Maybe they were at a house party. Maybe they lived there. If you think that these were cult members, that's cool. Then what you have to do is you have to prove it. You have to figure out who these people were, then get them in a room with Berkowitz, conspiring with them, then be able to take that to a NYPD detective and get the case looked at and reopened and cleared. And that's just what you have to do if you want to be a serious cult researcher. You can't just tell each other Grimm's fairy tales. Like those stories never change, right? Like the story of, let's say, I don't know, Little Red Riding Hood. It's never changed. It's a fairy tale, right? Like you can't add to, like, the story's written. Like you can't add to it, you can't take away. It's this weird story about some girl who disobeys her mother, and why is her mother letting her walk in the in the woods alone where there's wolves? That indicates some form of child abuse to me. And then this girl starts talking to wolves inexplicably, and then like the grandmother gets involved. Like this wolf knocks on the grandmother's door, but tells her it's her granddaughter, but it's a wolf, and a wolf can only sound like a wolf. So anyway, that story makes no sense. But the point that I'm trying to say is, Maury Terry's story is Little Red Robin Hood, right? It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale that can't be proven, changed, added to, subtracted to. It stands on its own, and you can never take it any further. It's a Grimm's fairy tale. It's like what it is. So I'll get back to our document in a second here. Intel Ilex. What's happening, people of the world? What our terminology, Intel Ilex, but I've never seen your name before, so I guess that's cool. What's up? Welcome, welcome, welcome. So so Ralph and Richie Redux. Let me just get this last document back up here. Right. So this is actually our last document of the day. So you have seen now in today's show some color. We have thrown in quite a bit. We have this weird story about some strange dude constantly talking about "pardon me, excuse me" as he carried a plastic bag under his arm, wearing dark clothes, just like the eyewitness saw of Berkowitz running away. With the perp was wearing dark clothes. So this is a little, fun little Easter egg that we found. And then of course, we have these canvases where we now get a little bit more flavor into where people were located, where their houses were, what they heard, and so on and so forth. Of course, the very interesting story of Ralph and Richie, which you guys can do whatever you want with. I'm not going there. Paul, Danny, and we see how these people could be connected in the community, and so on and so forth. So I just want to give you guys quickly. So our last show on Placido and Lupo is going to be called Glenn. I talked about it at the beginning of today's show, and the show announcement's already up. You can see it. I think we're going to be doing that this coming Monday. And Glenn is interesting. It's just more eyewitness testimony like we saw today, but it centers around this character by the name Glenn. What did Glenn see? His friends insisted that he saw the shooting. but Glenn says otherwise. So we got a whole bunch of color tonight, and we're going to see this whole other stream of social activity that took place at Elephas involving Glenn, involving light-skinned Hispanic dudes who were locked out of a car. Glenn's car was parked right behind the Cadillac. They were there right before the shooting. It gets kind of fun and interesting. So that'll be our last show on Placido and Lupo, and I'm in talks. I can't guarantee that this is going to happen, but I think we're going to make it happen. I met with Lorenzo the other day in the bunker where we had a nice productive meeting. I always love meeting with Mike. Dude's my rabbi. I got nothing but respect for the guy. And we're both kind of feeling like we gotta re-team up, put together the old dynamic duo of Lorenzo and Grossman. So we're gonna be working on a walk and talk up in Yonkers, and that's really all I'll say about the location. But I've kind of asked him to give us his thoughts on Wendy Savino and particularly the aftermath of because he's the person who's never been heard from. You've heard from Wendy. You've heard incessantly from me, of course. You've heard from Jay now with Eric Hunley's new video. If you guys haven't seen it, with Jay Savino and Detective Klein, that's a great interview. But Lorenzo hasn't been out there talking about it much, and of course, it's led people to say it says Lorenzo doesn't believe it anymore. Manny turned on Lorenzo like he turns on everybody. Oh, okay, whatever. No, Lorenzo and I are going to go out and do that, but we're going to try to weave it in with some more local Yonkers flavor and Lake Avenue and Mike's upbringing there and all that kind of stuff. So that hopefully will be out in the next couple of weeks. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here with me today. We're winding down again, quickly running out of material. Placido is really my last. I don't have anything else. For legal reasons, I can't show I have Berkowitz's military records and I have his USPS documents, but I can't show them, unfortunately. I can tell you though that they're nothing burgers. Nothing's very interesting. Berkowitz was an average soldier who didn't distinguish himself in any way, shape, or form, got busted for a couple of minor disciplinary actions. He did not burn down his barracks like we were told. And his USPS document was, very milquetoast as well. His work history, which we all know. And I think the main interesting thing that came out of his USPS application was the fact that on his previous addresses, he left out Coligny Avenue for whatever reason. All right. Well, I think that's basically it. Let me just check and see whether anything in the chat. Yes, it's been too long since Mike's been on. Yes. Mike's smart. He doesn't want to be part of any of the fray. Like when we finished interviewing Wendy, we got back in the car and I said to him, Mike, like this changes everything. Life is never going to be the same. And he's just very stoic. He's like, Manny, it was a ABC. It was one of the most simplest cases of all time. Not a big deal to me. But I knew that my life wasn't going to be the same after that. And it really hasn't. It's been a great journey. It's been awesome to feel like you've done something very special for this woman who, for 50 years has been saying that Berkowitz shot her, and finally now people believe her. And hopefully her story will go worldwide. And my hope is that the only hope that I have, because I don't ever tell you that you have to believe the Wendy story, but the only hope that I have is that it permanently attaches itself to the greater story of Son of Sam. And hopefully with this, gross. Let me do that. Hopefully with this Netflix thing, which I was told is it will be out in the next couple months, and Wendy's in it. The story made it into the documentary. Hopefully she wasn't edited out. Again, I don't know anything about it, have no control, and I'm not going to say anything further. But if she is in that Netflix thing, well, then it's game on. Her story will forever be part of the narrative. And to me, I think it's just a cool thing. I mean, even if you don't believe it, it's still a fun exercise to think of the possibility that he did, because again, the case was closed with naming him as the shooter. So whether you like that or not. All right, guys. Well, anyway, Derek, thank you so much. Nikozmas, Chris, we really appreciate all the kind words as we wind down this iteration of the video series, and of course, hope that bigger and better things are on the way for all of us. See you at the next show. Thank you, guys.